Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club and my October wrap-up. So in October I participated in TBR Harvest, which is a reading event hosted by Leandra, the TBR Zero, and I will leave a link to the playlist of videos where I played the booktuber bingo that she had organized. That was a lot of fun and a really complicated way to pick out a TBR, but yeah, mostly a lot of fun. There were a lot of booktubers who had submitted prompts and sent in a little video of themselves, and numbers were drawn, and yeah, it was a whole thing, and you can go watch that if you haven't seen it already. But in this video I want to just recap what I ended up reading and what I thought of the books that I read, and to see if I got bingo or not. I've been sick for about a week, just with a cold, so I don't know how long my voice is going to last today, so I'm gonna try to keep this kind of short and sweet. I'm not gonna go into the prompts too much just to save my voice a little bit, but I'm gonna put that up on the screen so you can see which prompts I fulfilled and who submitted it and all of that. In the booktuber bingo there were 10 cards to choose from, and I chose to play 2 of the bingo cards, number 7 and number 8, but I ended up focusing more on number 7. And since I don't tend to read too many books each month, I figured I would overlap some books between Shorty September and TBR Harvest, because the first numbers came out, I think it was like 19th of September, so I started the event then, so I had about a month and a half to complete the books so that I would have any chance to get a bingo. And so there is some overlap between the books that I read in September and the books that I read for TBR Harvest and that I put on my bingo card. So I have Thornhill by Pam Smythe, Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, and The Man Who Lived Underground by Richard Wright. And all of these 3 books I talked about in my September wrap-up, so I will leave a link to that in the description as well, and you can check that out to see what I thought about these 3 books. So the first thing that I finished in October was a horror graphic novel, and this is Swamp Thing Twin Branches by Maggie Stiefvater. And I don't remember exactly the story of this. It follows 2 twins, or like mainly one of the twins. He is doing some kind of experiment with plants, and they're going to like a different town where their cousins are. I don't know, not a lot happens, but he has this plant experiment, and his like twin brother is very like outgoing and social, and the main character that we're following, Alec, I think is the main character, is a bit more introverted and like not super outgoing and doesn't really feel like he fits in, but he sort of finds his people there, other people who are also interested in nature and plants and science and stuff like that. And then they go to a party and there's a girl there, and yeah, it's just a mix of different things. There's some like nature stuff, I felt like, some like messaging about nature, which was nice. The main character is also diabetic, so he has that to deal with, and that also comes into play in the story. And then there's like the social aspects and like being able to be yourself and things like that, and like finding your people. I don't know, overall I enjoyed it. I have a good memory of it, not a good memory, but like a positive memory. I didn't love the like art style, but I loved all of the colors. Yeah, just the overall vibe of this thing. It was a very quick read. I don't really know what else to say about it. I liked it, and I could count it toward the twin prompt on the Savage prompts this year, so that was also good. And I could also count it for a prompt on my bingo. I also continued with the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman, so I read volumes 4 and 5. I thought volume 5 was going to be the last one, but apparently there's going to be one more, which comes out next summer in 2026. So that was a little bit annoying. I could have waited and read the whole series next year instead, but anyways. I realized that like some of them are in Swedish and some of them are in English, which I don't really know why that is. They have like one set at my local library with like 1 through 5, but it's like every other one is in English and every other one is in Swedish. I don't know. These are lovely, and if you haven't read the Heartstopper series yet, I would highly recommend it. It's super sweet and super nice, and yeah, just very comforting to read. I also listened to No Friend to This House by Natalie Haynes on audiobook, which is Greek mythology retelling, and it's about Jason and Medea and the Argonauts. Jason and the Argonauts are going to hunt down this golden fleece from the golden ram, and that's a whole thing. I don't really know. I'm not super familiar with like the mythology of it all. I just like Natalie Haynes narrating the story and all of the little sidetracks that were going on. I really like that way of storytelling, and I find it nice to have it like in the background while I'm doing something or before I go to sleep. So this wasn't a story that I was like super focusing on while I was listening to it. I just sort of had like story time. And yeah, I just think it's really good for that. I did enjoy the like overarching story though, and I wasn't really familiar with Medea as a character and what it ended up happening and how she had to solve things. So that was interesting, and I enjoyed not knowing that before going into it. You can have all kinds of thoughts about that, but like it's mythology, so I don't really put too much like of my own values into it. It's like it's mythology, so anything can happen. But yeah, lots of interesting themes and characters and situations, and you know, things that are relatable as well. It's a very like feminist retelling, and yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, and I will definitely want to read something else from Natalie Haynes. I read Stone Blind by her before and loved that. I wasn't as blown away by this one, I think, as I was by Stone Blind. Maybe just because Stone Blind was the first one that I read from her. So this was kind of like just more of the same, but like that's also what I wanted. So I don't know, it wasn't like a 5-star amazing experience to me, but I still really enjoyed it and would recommend it if you enjoy Greek mythology retellings. Then I read Endling by Maria Reva. I had a copy from the library that I have since had to return. This one was longlisted for the Booker Prize this year. This novel is doing a lot of things, and I have a lot of respect for that, and I think the author did a very good job with what she was trying to do. It wasn't always the most enjoyable for me as a reader, which I will get into, but overall I liked it, and I think it's very well written and a very interesting story with a lot of different like components to it. So this story follows Reva, who is a woman living in Ukraine, and this is just as like the war is starting to ramp up. Reva is a scientist. She's working to save snails, like endangered species of snails, and she has this like mobile lab in a van, and to finance her research and project, you know, with these snails, she is part of romance tours in Ukraine where men come from other countries and want to find a bride, basically. They sort of have these like speed dates, and they go on dates and talk to each other and exchange information, and you know, it's not really like mail order bride, but it's like men coming there trying to find a partner. And in these romance tours, there's also 2 other women who are sisters, one of which works as an interpreter for the other sister. Like one of the sisters is part of the romance tours, and the other one is working as a translator. So she's just like coming along on the dates and translating between her sister and the men that she meets. And their mother used to be an activist against mail order brides and these romance tours and this whole thing, like doing stunts and things to draw attention to this issue. But she's now gone into hiding or like disappeared. And so the sisters don't know where their mother is. And so the sister, who is part of the romance tours, comes up with this idea to kidnap a bunch of the men from these romance tours to do as like a stunt for attention and hopefully like catch the attention of their mother. And so she approaches Reva and suggests that they can use her van to kidnap the men. And then we're going on this like bizarre, absurd adventure where the sisters want to find their mother or like get in contact with her, and Reva wants to save the snails, and then they have this van full of bachelors. Yeah, it's a very absurd situation, and it's like humorous at times, but there's also a lot of emotional things going on as well, and like the sisters and their mother and like that whole relationship and their history and all of that. There's the war going on, which is obviously a part of the story as well. And then there's also like, climate change and endangered species and like that whole angle. And then there's also a little bit of romance going on, and it's just, there's a lot going on in the story. The thing that sort of took me out of the story was when the author sort of inserts herself into this story. There are a few chapters, like, I don't know, halfway through the book or like 2/3 into the book or something, where she sort of inserts herself, and it becomes a bit strange. And then there are a few chapters that are like repeating the same scene a few different times and like trying to figure out sort of which one was sort of wishful thinking and which one was what really happened. And there's this whole discussion about, being part of the Ukrainian diaspora and like having Ukrainian roots, but not being in Ukraine, and then watching this whole war unfold and all of the guilt that can come with that. And just, it's a weird situation to be in, and a lot of different perspectives and things to discuss around that. So like there's a lot in this book, and if you find any of those things interesting, like the feminist issue with the romance tours and mail order brides and all of that, the climate thing, the war thing, the diaspora thing, like there are so many things going on. And then also like the interpersonal intrigue and this whole bizarre adventure. I don't know, I'm going in circles, but like there's a lot going on, and it was a very engaging read, I thought, and I wanted to know what was going to happen with this like the adventure part of the story. That was what kept me engaged and like interested in reading the book. I didn't think it was fantastic, and I didn't think it was bad. It was just mostly kind of great and interesting, but it was like this weird mix of this absurd story and then these super serious topics, and it kind of works until the author inserts herself, and then it just becomes too much. So yeah, I guess those are my thoughts about that book. I would recommend reading it, but like just know that it's a bit of a different one. It's a bit like experimental, I guess, or like, I don't know. I think I've made my point. Another book that I listened to on audiobook was Someone Knows by Keeland. I would say this is like a romantic thriller, or like a thriller romance. I think the author has written a lot of romance novels before, but this was more pitched as like a thriller. And what intrigued me about it was like the premise, obviously, which was that there's this woman who is teaching a writing class, like creative writing, and there's someone submitting chapters, like they're submitting their chapters online, and she gets these like sort of anonymous or like some kind of fake account submitting chapters that read like her own past. When she was in school, her best friend was involved with their teacher, and this teacher ended up dead, and that's because she killed him. And these chapters are now like retelling that story, and so she recognizes that this is a true story and it's her story, and someone knows, which he did. And all of that sounded really intriguing to me, and that is what the story is about, and I think that part was interesting. But then like the romance aspect of it all was not really my favorite, and I don't know what I had expected, but it wasn't really that. I don't know, if you like thriller romances, I'm sure this one is a good one. I know other people have loved it. I'm just not much of a romance reader, and I don't really, I don't know, I don't think it added anything to the story. I thought the part that was interesting to me was the writer part and like all of that. It's fine if you like that kind of thing. I'm sure it's great. It wasn't my favorite. Next, I finally read The Book of Guilt by Chidgey, which was a very anticipated read for me, and a book that I have been dreading and putting off because I was scared to be disappointed, and I also didn't want it to be over because I figured it would be a book that I enjoyed a lot, and I did, and now I'm sad that it's over. And I'm also really glad I read it because I loved it. This was definitely a 5-star read for me, and I did a whole, like a separate video about it, so I will leave a link to that in the description as well, and you know, in the cards and things. This follows 3 triplets, 3 boys who are 13 years old, and they are the last ones left in a boys' home in England in 1979, and this home is about to be closed. This is all taking place in a world where no one won the Second World War, so things are a little bit different, but we're just following their daily life as they are being cared for by their 3 mothers who work in shifts. There's Mother Morning, Mother Afternoon, and Mother Night, and when they wake up, their dreams and nightmares are recorded in the Book of Dreams, and they have their daily lessons from the Book of Knowledge, and then their sins are recorded in the Book of Guilt. And then we also get a couple of other perspectives, one of which is Nancy, who is a 13-year-old girl who's not living in this home. She's in a separate family. It's all very mysterious and a little bit confusing at first. We're just sort of plopped into their daily life, and yeah, but something is off. There's an unsettling sense of something being wrong, but we're not really sure what. I think it's so well written. I think it's so interesting. It's such an intelligent, like smart story. It's horrific and very dark, but it's also a little bit whimsical at times, or like there's humor in the way that some things are told, and like as the boys are 13, they have their own perspective on things, like as you do when you're 13. It's very weird and kind of creepy, unsettling, mysterious, just something isn't right, and I love this kind of story, where we're not sure what's going on, but it's like unraveling, and when you're starting to realize what's happening, it's very interesting, let's just say that, and I don't want to say too much, but yeah, this was definitely a 5-star read, and I'm very happy I read it. I definitely want to read more from Catherine Chidgey too. I think the next one that I will pick up is probably going to be The Axeman's Carnival, I think it's called, and I also want to read Remote Sympathy, which is the one that was nominated for the Women's Prize. And then finally, I read Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite. This is a very short little story. It's a cozy science fiction mystery set in space, and there's like body hopping. I don't know. The detective is an elderly woman, and she wakes up in a body that isn't hers, and then someone else has been murdered, and in this world their minds are like backed up in these books in this library on the spaceship, and so even if you die like physically, your mind is still backed up and can be put into a new body. So people live for like hundreds of years just changing bodies, but this time someone has been murdered and their mind has also been deleted. This detective, Dorothy Gentleman, is tasked with finding out what happened. I thought this was a fine time. It was a good little sort of palate cleanser in between longer books. It wasn't my favorite, and I think that came down to like the writing style. It's not a difficult read by any means, but there was just some parts where I had to like reread a sentence to make sure I got the reference right, or like for example, it said I and then apostrophe D in a sentence, but I had no way of knowing what that meant, like if it was I would or I had, or and so that didn't like make sense until the end of the sentence, and so then I had thought it meant something else, and I had to like reread it to get the context right, and like just little things like that, and just the way the sentences were structured sometimes made it a little bit like I didn't have the best flow, and especially after having read the Book of Guilt, which I think is fantastically written and very easy to read, and like you're not thinking about the writing itself so much unless it's something extra nice. But this one was like I had to sort of struggle sometimes and like piece the sentence together, and so that wasn't the best experience, because I want to be focusing on the story and not trying to figure out what order to process the words in the sentence. You know what I mean? I'm still glad I read it and I enjoyed it. I don't think I'm gonna be reading the next book in the series, but overall I liked it, and yeah. So those are all of the books that I read in October, and I did end up getting bingo on my number 7 bingo card. I do have the bottom row, but that's like all books that I read in September and then 2 activities, which still counts, but like it's not my best bingo. I also have a bingo in the G column where I have Heartstopper, The Book of Guilt, Thornhill, No Friend to This House, and Fight Club. So that's at least 3 books that I read in October and then 2 that I read in September. So that feels a little bit more like substantial. Like that's a bingo to be proud of. And then I also put all of the other books that I read on the bingo as well, but like they're all scattered all over the place, so no more like bingo. I had a really good time and I read some good books, and yeah, overall very happy with my reading in October. Let me know if you have read any of the books that I have been talking about in this video, or if you plan to pick any of them up, or just let me know what you're currently reading. I hope it's something good, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. And the okay. Or just let me know what you're currently reading.